All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to one of our intern webinars. Today we have Catherine Carbeck. Catherine is an MS-CPD student here at Washington State University. She's in the Nutrition and Exercise Physiology program at WSU Spokane. And her topic for today is physical activity, what, why, and how. And off to you, Catherine.
Thanks, Catalina. So like Catalina said, I'm Catherine, and today we're going to be discussing physical activity, specifically the what, why, and how of physical activity. Some of the topics may be a refresher for you from previous presentations and curriculum that we have at EFNEP, but hopefully we'll reinforce those topics and then also go a little bit deeper into those topics. Throughout these slides, I'll have a few questions and activities, so feel free to either unmute yourself or type in the chat to answer as you would like. I believe Catalina will be monitoring that chat for me as well, so I don't miss anything. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll start with the what of physical activity. So just to start out, what comes to mind when you hear physical activity? And again, either unmute yourself or put that in the chat if you'd like to answer.
I think of exercises like running or hiking.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's one of those things that is always on the back of my mind that I'm supposed to do, but don't always get to do.
Yes, that's definitely something a lot of people think it's good, but might not have the time to do it, definitely. Those are all some great answers. I think we have one in the chat. Let me double check. Oh yes, Martha says movement. Yes, that is also correct. Not that there is a right or wrong answer here, but great answers so far, guys. So physical activity, according to the 2018 Physical Activity Guidelines, refers to any bodily movement produced by the contraction of skeletal muscle that increases energy expenditure above a basal level. And so pretty much this is saying anytime that you're using a muscle to move, that you're using more energy than a rest level, which is that basal level, or when you're seated, sedentary, just at rest, you're using more energy than you do at rest. And so that can be a movement that's done at home when you're out and about running errands, or even at work. And at home, you could be something as simple as making a cup of coffee. You're doing a movement that is expending more energy than if you were just at rest. And then I believe you all may have experience with this chart. So physical activity is broken down by level of intensity. So we have that light, moderate, and vigorous intensity for physical activity. The light being that low effort where there's not a lot of change in your heart rate. Your heart isn't really beating any faster than before performing the physical activity. And you don't really feel tired after performing that light physical activity. And then you have your moderate physical activity. It takes a little more effort to breathe. So your heart rate is a little higher, it's beating a little faster, and you have a bit of tiredness. And then there's that vigorous stage of physical activity, which means you're putting in your maximum effort. Your heart rate is pretty high, it's beating pretty fast, you're breathing quickly, and you get tired more quickly when you're doing this vigorous activity. So there is a difference between physical activity and exercise. Exercise is a form of physical activity that is planned, structured, repetitive, and performed with the goal of improving health or fitness. All exercise is physical activity, but not all physical activity is exercise. And when I read that last line of the definition for exercise, it made me think back in grade school when you're learning shapes and how all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. it kind of reminded me of that. So if you want to think of it that way. So the main difference here is that exercise is that planned, repeated, and purposed movement or physical activity. And that's the main difference from exercise versus physical activity. Planned, meaning it's in your calendar, it's scheduled, you know when you're going to do it. Repeated, meaning you do it more than once a week, once a month, whatever repetition schedule you're on for that physical activity or exercise. And that it's purposed, that there's intention behind doing that exercise. And it has that goal of improving health or fitness. And then just a reminder, whether it's physical activity or exercise, all movement is good movement. Whether it's cleaning around the house, doing some laundry, or if you have a scheduled exercise regimen that you're doing where you are doing specific movements that you planned out, all movement is good movement and is put towards that physical activity that we want to do each day. So I have a short activity for us to participate in. I'll have a few photos pop up on these slides as we go through them of different physical activities that you might do day to day or at certain times. And I'm hoping that you all can help me put them into the right category, whether it's light intensity, that low effort, a moderate intensity where you more effort to breathe, or that vigorous intensity, which is that maximum effort. And if you have your camera on, you can either hold up a number 1 for light, a number 2 for moderate, or number 3 for vigorous. Or if you don't have your camera on, feel free to put that number in the chat and we'll see. Let me just open my little picture of you guys so I can actually see you. Okay. So for this first picture, we have washing dishes. Do we think that is light, moderate, or vigorous activity?
And I see in the chat box a lot of ones and light.
Okay. All right, I'm seeing ones on the screens as well. Let's see. You are correct. It is light. So washing dishes is low effort. Your heart rate isn't really raised. You're not breathing harder when you're washing dishes. And the next image we have is going for a brisk walk. For those of you in Spokane, this is Centennial Trail. So where do we think a brisk walk would fall? Light, moderate, or vigorous?
And I see a number of 2s in the chat box.
All right, I'm seeing 2s on screen. All right. And that's correct. Again, you're taking a little more effort to breathe. Your heart rate's a little elevated. So a brisk walk would be moderate. And how about cooking at home? If you're just chopping up some vegetables, stirring a pot, where do we think that would fall? I see some 1s on screen.
I see the 1s on the chat box, a couple of 2s.
All right, got some mixed reviews here. Let's see where we're at. So cooking, it depends on what cooking you're doing, but if you're doing light cooking, it would be that light intensity. Your heart rate isn't too elevated or not really elevated, and you're not struggling to breathe. And this next one, how about a HIIT workout or circuit workout where you're doing multiple exercises in a row for and you're going for time? See some 3s on screen.
3s on the chat box as well.
And 3s on the chat box. All right. Let's see where this lies. And that's correct. A HIIT workout is definitely 3. I don't know if you guys have done HIIT workouts before or a circuit workout, but they are definitely a vigorous intensity activity. And the next one we have is raking leaves. So fall is coming, so we all might experience this soon. Where do we think this falls? I see some 2s.
2s on the chat box as well.
All right. Yep, it's on a moderate level. So your heart rate is probably a little elevated and it's a little more effort to breathe. And our last one is going for a run. Where do we think that would fall? Light, moderate, or vigorous? Got some threes. All right.
Threes in the chat box as well.
All righty. And that would be correct. Running is a vigorous activity. Again, your heart rate is a little higher, probably pretty maximum effort, and then you're breathing heavier as well. You guys are pros at this. All right. Great job on that activity, guys. So switching gears, we're going to talk about how much physical activity we should get in a day. So the guidelines recommend that we get moderate to vigorous intensity activity. And with that activity, adults should get at least 30 minutes most days of the week. And the guidelines do say 30 minutes of moderate intensity, at least 5 days of the week, or a mixture of moderate to vigorous 30 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week. I like to put a bow on it and say at least 30 minutes most days of the week, just to keep it a little simpler and not get mixed up in the numbers. You just know it's 30 minutes most days of the week. And then for children, it is 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity at every day of the week. And that's mostly because children, if you've been around children, they have a lot more energy than adults. And they're also in their growth and development phase. So it's very important for that aspect as well. And then our physical activity can improve our physical fitness. Our physical fitness is the ability to carry out daily tasks with vigor and alertness without undue fatigue and with ample energy to enjoy leisure time pursuits and respond to emergencies. So that whole definition from the guidelines is basically saying, how well can you do the activities that you do day to day? Does your body adapt well to it, or do you get tired quickly doing your regular day-to-day activities? So the more physical activity we do, the more improvement we see in our physical fitness, or our baseline for where we're at physically. And with physical fitness, as we improve that, comes health benefits. So physical fitness can be broken down into these 5 categories. We have the cardiorespiratory fitness, which is your heart and your lungs. And basically that's going to be to improve your cardiorespiratory, we're going to do more endurance. So like you're walking or running, swimming, kind of the longer exercises that focus on larger muscle groups. We also have the musculoskeletal fitness, which is focused on your muscles and your strength. So exercises to improve your musculoskeletal fitness include things like body weight exercises, such as this image here is a push-up, or you can do specific weight exercises with handheld weights as well. You also have flexibility, which is just the range of motion at different joints. So you could have like your shoulders or your hips, just how flexible you are at certain joints. And then to improve flexibility, you can do things like static stretches, which is those stretches where you hold them for 10 to 30 seconds. Or you could do dynamic stretches, which is more of an active movement that involves some sort of movement like a leg swing or an arm circle. We also have balance, which is kind of like when people say find your center of gravity, just seeing where your equilibrium is and if you can keep balanced. And exercises for that can be, a really good one is yoga. Anything that uses an exercise ball is great too for stability. Those stability exercises improve your balance. And then we also have speed, which are kind of your more explosive exercises. In this image, you can see this person is doing a box jump. So that's a great improvement for speed. And then also anything that has the term agility around it. If you've ever seen people set up cones and they're going in and out of the cones, just exercises like that. So I have a few examples here. Feel free to do them with me if you would like to. So for flexibility, the back scratch test is testing your shoulder flexibility. So what this person is doing, I'll do it. And if you guys want to do it with me, feel free. So you would take one arm and place it behind your back with your palm facing down. And then you would take your other hand, palm facing up, and reach up your back and try to touch your fingers together. And if you have good flexibility, you'll hopefully be able to touch your fingers. And then the further away you are, that's kind of just the less flexible you are. And then some people can actually overlap their fingers. That shows really good flexibility. And a fun thing to do also is test both sides, because a lot of the times you'll find one shoulder is more flexible than the other. So it's kind of interesting to see. And then as you work on flexibility, your fingers will get closer together as you get more flexible. And then this other activity we can do together, if you would like, go ahead and stand up. I don't know how well you all can see me, but so like the picture, you have your arms crossed.
And we do
And
have
then-
Kylie sharing on the chat box. My right shoulder is more flexible than my left.
Hey, look at that.
Experience
There you
too.
go. Exactly. One of my shoulders is definitely more flexible than the other. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should work on that. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so this next one is a single leg stance. So we'll cross our arms and then left or right knee, whichever one you feel comfortable picking up, you're just lifting that. And you're trying to hold that for 30 seconds without falling or having too much movement in your body. So we don't actually have to hold it for 30 seconds, but it's a fun thing to try. And if you get through that and you have good balance that way, try closing your eyes. So if we lift one of those knees and close our eyes, I lose my balance very quickly. So it's a good way to test that out. Of course, you want to make sure if you ever are doing it with somebody that they're safe and not around different furniture that they might hurt themselves on. If they do fall, that would be not so great. But just 2 exercises that are kind of fun to do to test your flexibility and balance. Thank you all for participating. I hope that was insightful a little bit for you. So we will move on from that. And just a recap for what we've talked about so far. So physical activity is any bodily movement produced by the contraction of skeletal muscle that increases energy expenditure above a basal level. So again, expending more energy than at rest. And then physical activity is grouped by that intensity, light, moderate, and vigorous. And then we want to incorporate different forms of physical activity, like we just did for the flexibility and balance. And then of course, cardiorespiratory, musculoskeletal, and speed to improve all areas of the physical fitness. And then just those time recommendations, adults 30 minutes most days of the week, and children 60 minutes of physical activity every day. And before we move on to the why of physical activity, does anyone have any questions at the moment? All right, if there are no questions, we'll go ahead and move on to the why. And a question for you all, what are some reasons people do physical activity?
To lose weight.
Definitely losing weight.
And in the chat box, we have Melody to be healthy, Kylie to live a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly, guys. Those are some great reasons. Definitely people want to do physical activity for health reasons and to get outdoors sometimes. Lots of reasons people would be physically active. So some health reasons to be physically active. Overarching kind of theme is muscle and strength. So physical activity builds up your muscle mass, which in turn builds up your strength. And the stronger you are, the easier day-to-day activities become. And that can be something like going up a flight of stairs or taking a shower, getting dressed, transportation from place to place. Those activities just become easier when you are adapting your body to do physical activity more regularly. You can do those day-to-day activities more easily. And then specifically, it helps your lungs. Our lungs have muscles that help us breathe, that expand and contract our lungs. So the stronger your lung muscles are, the easier it is to breathe. In addition, physical activity also increases the amount of oxygen you can take in one breath. So the more physical activity you do, the more oxygen you're taking in one breath. It's also great for bone health. For children, this is important for bone strengthening and development because they are in that development stage. We're making sure that their bones are healthy. And then it's also...
We had some participation on the chat box. Brianna says for fun, and Scotty says to increase flexibility.
Oh yeah, those are great reasons too. Flexibility, and to me, physical activity is always fun. For some people, it's only sometimes fun, but I think those are great answers as well. So then also the bone health. It's important for adults too, because once you reach about the age of 30, your bone density, or like the thickness of your bones, starts to decline. So physical activity can help slow that process down. So as you age, you can do more physical activity so that your bones are having some sort of weight bearing physical activity to them. So they have to adapt to that physical activity, which in turn causes them to increase in density, or at least slow the process of aging, which includes decreased bone density. And then for older adults, it's also improves bone density and reduces the risk of osteoporosis or porous bones. And then of course, physical activity helps with heart health. It reduces your risk for a number of heart diseases, including stroke. And this is because the heart is also a muscle. So if we're strengthening our heart, then it doesn't take as much effort for our heart to pump our blood, and it has a better blood flow when our heart is strong enough to pump our blood regularly. So that also helps. If we have a good blood flow, we can reduce hypertension or reduce our blood pressure if it's high. So physical activity is great for reducing heart disease risk and reducing hypertension. It also helps to have, when you have that good blood flow, we're reducing our cholesterol or like fat buildup in our arteries, which is also a cause of heart diseases. So it's great for that as well. And then physical activity, like someone said before, is also great for weight loss and just maintenance of a healthy weight. We know that being overweight or obese does cause a greater risk for some diseases like heart disease or type 2 diabetes. So if we can reduce our weight to a healthier weight, then we're reducing our risk for some of those diseases as well. And it also just makes day-to-day activities, again, easier when you're not carrying around a little bit of extra weight that could be reduced with physical activity. And then this slide is taken from the Get Moving presentation. Again, just emphasizing that as you move from the red to the green zone, you're moving from more of a sedentary or seated lifestyle to a more physically active lifestyle. And as you are more physically active, we're reducing the risk of all-cause mortality. Some of the leading causes of death in the US right now are heart disease and cancer. And physical activity has been shown to reduce the risk of heart disease and also some forms of cancer. So overall, the more physically active you are, the improved health and reduced risk of diseases you have. And then just some other reasons or other benefits of physical activity. Physical activity is known to reduce stress and depression. And with that comes a feeling of feeling good. If you've ever done a workout, afterwards you might feel more energized, and you're like, oh, but I just did all this activity. How can I have more energy? A lot of the times it's because of those hormonal changes, which are reducing the stress and depression hormones and increasing the ones that make you feel good, and just kind of making your hormones balanced. And then it also improves brain function. As we are physically active, we are taking in more oxygen, which means more oxygen is getting to our brain. So that improves your brain function. And then also those hormones being balanced out can improve brain function as well. For children, we can see this when they're in school. They have more retention of what they're learning, and they also have better focus. For adults, it helps with memory and then also critical thinking and decision-making skills. It also improves your sleep. So you can, when you're doing physical activity regularly, you fall asleep easier, you stay asleep longer, and then during the day, you don't feel as tired. So when you fall asleep, you also get more of that deep sleep or the REM sleep. So that is another proponent of getting better sleep. And then overall, you just have an improved quality of life when you're physically active. Again, you have a reduced risk for disease, and you feel better, you sleep better, and your brain function is improved. So overall, quality of life is improved. And before we move on to the physical activity, how, does anyone have questions about the why? All right. If there are no questions, we'll move on. So what are some barriers that people may have to doing physical activity?
I see on the chat box, time from Scotty. I second that.
Yes,
Time,
time is
Martha.
definitely a big one.
Time, disability, injuries.
Definitely, all great answers.
I'm just gonna throw it out there. Motivation, at least for me.
That's
Oh,
definitely true.
weather.
Yes, weather's a big one if you're trying to get some physical activity outside.
And Melody, I'm glad to hear I'm not alone. Mood, lazy.
Definitely. Yeah, those are all some great answers. Time, motivation, weather, injuries, definitely all
Environment.
really good. Yes, definitely the environment, what you have access to. Those are all a lot of major reasons that are barriers to doing physical activity. All right, thank you guys for those answers. So the next few slides, I'm going to go through some ideas for incorporating physical activity into your regular day-to-day life. And we'll see if we can't address some of those barriers that we just stated. So for the how, standing up often, that's a little thing that you can do each day that makes a big impact, especially now with people working from home, sitting at a desk all day. If you can stand up and walk around just for 5 minutes every hour, just to get some sort of physical activity in, get your body moving. Like we saw in that graph that had the red to the green, we saw the more physically active you are, the reduced risk for all mortality or all cause mortality. And then the more sedentary you are, the greater the risk. Also, starting slow and breaking it up. Starting slow is very important when starting to increase your physical activity. This is a lifestyle change, not a quick fix. So starting slow is important to not feel overwhelmed and to be able to feasibly incorporate this into your day-to-day life long term. Also, breaking it up. 30 minutes a day for a lot of people, that's a big chunk of time that they don't have to commit to doing physical activity. So you can break that 30 minutes up. You can do 6 times, do 5 minutes a day, 6 times. You can do 3 times a day for 10 minutes, something along those lines. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes altogether. For example, if you have a dog that you have to go walk, and they go out 3-4 times a day. Take that as your physical activity, walk slightly faster to get to that moderate to vigorous range, and then you get your physical activity in. Or if you have a lunch break, can you take a walking lunch where you can eat your meal? If the weather's not good, you can do some stairs or walk around the building inside, or if the weather is nice, go outside and take a walk. If you have kiddos and they have activities that they have to go to that you're transporting them to, so you don't have time, if you're there for whatever activity it is, whether it's a music lesson or practice for a sport, is there somewhere that you can get some physical activity in while they're doing whatever activity they're doing? Also, getting friends or family involved is a great way to stay on top of your physical activity. If you are the main person providing childcare, if you incorporate activities that you can do with your kids that get both you and your child more physically active, whether it's playing tag outside, or even if you have a younger child that you have to carry, just carrying them around is physical activity. So if you are cooking or doing some cleaning and there's a way that you could carry them around while doing that, that's a great way to get some physical activity in with your kids. Also, family and friend involvement keeps you on track and gives you a support system. If you do it with someone, usually it's more fun, and if you're not someone who enjoys physical activity right off the bat, having family or friends, someone to chat with or kind of distract you from whatever physical activity you are doing is helpful to pass that time. So those are just some ideas for physical activity specifically for incorporating that. And then if you're wanting to do specific exercise, we said exercise was that planned, purposed, and repeated type of physical activity. You can use things that you have at home. A milk jug, once it's empty, fill it with water, and now you have a dumbbell. You could use a water bottle as a weight, or canned goods. I also know some people will fill those canvas grocery bags with canned goods because one can might not be heavy enough, but if you stack enough in there, something sturdy that'll hold enough cans, then you can increase the weight if you want to. Towels are also a great use for floor exercises, for like balance and stability. A lot of exercises you can use towels. So there's really a lot of stuff you can do from home. If you have access to YouTube or just the internet in general, you can find a lot of workouts that are already put together and that will walk you through each exercise in case you don't want to have to come up with a workout plan yourself. It's already made for you. Also, penciling it in. Like we said, time is one of the barriers to doing physical activity or exercise. But if you put it on your calendar and you see it and it's on there, your family knows, you know, you're more likely to complete that physical activity because you know when you're going to do it and where. And then also starting slow with exercise is very important. We want to avoid injuries. So starting slow and low is the way to go. That's the little slogan I came up with just now, actually. But kind of low on the weight because you don't want to start out super heavy if you are losing or are using weights, or on time if you want to start out with a less amount of time so that you don't overexert yourself or feel too tired. And then just starting slow again so you don't feel overwhelmed. This again is a lifestyle change, not a quick fix. So we want to start slow so that it's enjoyable and sustainable. All right, so now that I've told you guys, given you a few examples of some ways to overcome those barriers, what's something you can do to stay physically active?
I think I could be better about stopping, like taking a break from being in front of the screen, like maybe in between Zooms, do a quick loop around the block.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great example.
And Sarah just shared scheduling her workouts, and Kylie walking breaks. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Those are some great ideas.
Like, I wonder if I could pull off just a quick walk around the block after every Zoom. How many steps would that be?
There you go. All right. Thank you for those answers, guys. Those are some great ideas for incorporating some more physical activity.
And I see
So just a quick, oh,
Maria just shared, if I don't have time, just splitting the 30 minutes into 10 minutes activities. Oh, I should try that. And Martha, stand up, breathe breaks.
yeah, those are all great as well. I like the stand up, breathe, and breaking up the time. Yes, that's definitely some great ideas for physical activity. All right. Well, hopefully this helped you guys out to find some ways to incorporate some more physical activity. So just a quick recap about what we talked about today. How much physical activity do adults need per week? Does anyone remember the kind of the guidelines for adults?
I see 130 minutes, and Martha said 30 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So 150 minutes a
day.
week or 30 minutes a day of that moderate to vigorous physical activity. Great job. And what about children? What were those guidelines for children?
60 minutes per day.
Yep, exactly. 60 minutes per day.
And we
Great
have
job.
Scotty and Martha on the chat box, 60 minutes per day.
Perfect. Great job, guys. And just a reminder, physical activity helps reduce a number of diseases and promotes heart, lung, bone, and mental health. It also increases muscle and strength, which help with those day-to-day activities and your brain function. And then just a little reminder that physical activity can pretty much be done anywhere, anytime. So a lot of the times it's just puzzling and figuring out where that physical activity fits in, but it really can be done anywhere. So I just want to thank you guys again for coming to this Zoom, and just want to see if anyone has any other questions for me.
While you guys think about your questions, I am going to stop the recording.